Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update. Join the only official Telegram channel of Rahul's IAS Study Circle to get relevant material and important updates.
Hello everyone and welcome to Daily News Simplified, your one-stop solution to detailed analysis of current affairs which are published in the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper. Articles dated 3rd of July 2021 are listed on the screen and the timestamping for these articles is given in the description box. So let us begin with the first article itself. So the first article for today's discussion was published on page 6 of Delhi edition, the Hindu newspaper. This article actually talks about the importance of solar energy in rural areas of India. This article actually talks about a recent initiative which was taken up by the government of Rajasthan, where the power regulator Rajasthan Electricity Corporation has ordered to solarize the unelectrified public schools. It means photovoltaic cells would be installed on the roofs of these schools in order to provide the electricity and meet the needs of power in those schools. The regulator has also directed to seek CSR funds for solarizing this drive. It means that private funds could be now utilized, which is part of the Companies Act 2013, for the development of this solarizing initiative. Now, when it comes to the benefits of this initiative, well, these are as follows. Installation of the batteries would help in long-term supply. Of course, because if we have batteries, we can store power. And storage of power can actually help in utilizing the excess supply whenever and wherever we want. So in the era of digital education, this kind of initiative can actually help to boost up the education level in the country. The regular supply of power will definitely help these schools to act as a purpose for the emergency like the current pandemic or maybe the natural disaster. So people can stay inside the school building, public school buildings during those days. And when they are staying over there, solar power can provide a regular power supply. Similarly, this power will also benefit to extend the supply to the midday meal kitchens, toilet functionings, and of course the motorized water pumps, which will actually reduce the burden on the staff and the other members to fetch water. And lastly, CSR funding will remove the burden of infrastructure expenses on the DISCOMs, because already the DISCOMs in India are under severe pressure of funding. However, there are certain limitations which are attached to this initiative. First, why only schools? Why not the other public centers like primary health centers or maybe the FCI godowns or any other public place? Secondly, we also have lack of proper storage of batteries and panels. So if we are talking about the funds, how much funds will be invested on the batteries and the other panels? And who is going to store them? Who is going to keep an eye on the functioning of those panels? That question remains to be answered. Next being that it is not an all-weather phenomena. Take the case of monsoon. In the monsoon season, we have dense clouds, and that actually restrict the transfer of solar energy to these panels. So it is not a well-proof all-weather program. And lastly, the skill development in order to run such kind of solar plants is very limited when it comes to their functioning and maintenance. Well, apart from this article itself, what we will focus is the mains perspective of solar energy. So the entire discussion would be on the mains perspective of the energy. Now, when it comes to the mains perspective, where does the solar energy can be asked? Well, of course, your general studies paper 3, where energy resources are important. Apart from this, it can also be asked in your geography related questions. UPSC can ask you the relevance of geography when it comes to the distribution of power. It can also be asked under the governance issues, where UPSC can ask you questions related to the schemes which are beneficiary for power generation. And of course, in your prelim examination, all facts are relevant with respect to the solar energy. Now let us start with the solar power in India, the big picture. We all know that solar power functions when there is a radiation which falls, or the solar radiation which falls on photovoltaic cells. And because of this, there is a generation of power. The electric charge is generated, which is transferred to the storage facilities or may be used directly. So now the question arises, why do we need solar power? Well, first of all, India is a tropical country. It means it lies around the Tropic of Cancer. And half of India actually lies below the Tropic of Cancer, which means there is plenty of solar radiation which is available. As per the Ministry of Renewable Energy, India's land area is receiving about 4 to 7 kilowatt hour per square meter per day, which is very high. The relevance of this data is so much so that the National Institute of Solar Energy, which has assessed that India's solar potential is about 748 gigawatt. If you cannot remember this, you can write 750 also in the round figure. Assuming that only 3% of the wasteland, not the entire geography of India, but just the 3% of the wasteland to be used for solar photovoltaic cells. Now you can imagine the potential we have when it comes to the solar power. Now, apart from being abundantly available, we also have certain other benefits. Imagine this. There is availability of generate power on the distributed basis. So you can have the decentralized framework when it comes to the solar power. When it comes to the wind power, you do not have that luxury. When it comes to the nuclear power, you do not have that luxury. And the same is applicable on the biofuels also. So when it comes to solar power, it can be used in the smallest or the micro level possible and can go up to megawatts or even gigawatts. It also enables the rapid capacity addition with short lead times, which we will discuss very shortly, that how in the last 5 years India was able to generate more and more gigawatt of solar power with respect to the other one. And now when it comes to the rural areas, there are two very good benefits. First, it will help in meeting the cooking, lighting and other energy needs of the rural area, meeting the environmental demand. And when it comes to the socio-economics, there is reduction in the drudgery among rural women and the girls who are engaged in collection of the fuel wood. This actually reduces their other daily routine work, including the education. And it of course reduces the cooking in the smoky kitchen. So we have now induction cookers, induction cookwares, which can be utilized through the solar power. It also helps in reducing or minimizing the risk of various diseases, including your lung and eye diseases. It helps in employment generation. Of course, from installation to the maintenance, we require manpower. It improves the standard of living in the rural areas. Of course, we are also looking for rural urban mission. And lastly, it creates for opportunity on the economic activity at the village level. So overall, it is a win-win situation for India's rural India, or the Sarvodaya model which was given by Mahatma Gandhi. Apart from the socio-economic reasons, can you quote any other reasons in order to write the benefits of solar? Well, let us see them one by one. First, of course, being the geographical reason. So the first and the most important benefit is it is decentralized. The second reason is it is pan-India. So you can have solar powers in Delhi, so you can have in Chennai, you can have it in Northeast and even in the Kashmir. When it comes to the economic benefits, of course, it will generate the employment, it will generate the manufacturing or the domestic manufacturing in India, it will boost your exports. When it comes to the energy needs, which we have already discussed, it will boost up the requirement of the clean energy which India is aspiring for. Coming on the political needs. Well, what are the political benefits? They are not very hard to imagine. First of all, of course, wherever we have such issues, we have federalism. So when it comes to the power supply from one state to the other, we have issues. Alright, we also have issues with the river system and of course hydropower. So that issues could be easily resolved. Secondly, it will also promote on empowering the grassroots level. That is your PRIs and your urban local bodies. And lastly, we should also read about the environmental benefit. Environmental benefits are very simple. It will reduce your CO2 emission and of course it will increase the mitigation efforts of the government. All these points, all these macro points can help you to write a good answer in the mains examination when it comes to the solar power. Apart from this, There is a very important initiative which was taken up in 2010. It is the National Solar Mission, which is also part of National Action Plan on Climate Change, which India undertook in order to fight the climate change which is occurring in the country. It calls for an active participation from the state to promote the ecological sustainable growth while addressing India's energy security challenge. The objective of the scheme is to establish India as a global leader by creating the policy conditions for solar technology diffusion across the country as quickly as possible. And under the same mission, the current government targets to install 100 gigawatt of grid connected solar power plant by the year 2022, which is unfortunately not likely to happen. Now, given all the benefits we have regarding the solar energy, let us look into what are the real issues which we are facing on this energy front. Well, I have listed down 12 of them. You can add n number of issues, whatever comes to your mind and which is contextual and relevant to the topic. So the issue of domestic content requirement at the WTO, of course, it is a major issue. It restricts India's effort on indigenization on the solar power. Next being your challenge to balance the prioritizing of domestic goals, that is 100 gigawatt of goal, and the WTO commitment, because WTO actually talks about free trade policy. And India's existing framework focus more on Atmanirbharta. So there is a kind of paradox between both of these. Next being your high share of imported products, of course we have so-called Chinese majority when it comes to the supply of important equipments. The domestic manufacturers are not that much technically and economically stronger as the other counterparts or our competitors like China. The land availability is limited, especially in the urban areas. Issues of solid waste which is likely to arrive in the near future. Dumping of the products. So nations like China which have lower amount of prices. So nations like China which has very low prices when it comes to the manufacturing of the solar panel is trying to dump those products at lower prices. And this dumping actually hurt the domestic manufacturing which is as of now not competitive enough to fight the international competition. The lack of domestic entrepreneurship, of course, entrepreneurship in India is mostly focusing on IT services and is not that much interested in the energy sector. Issues between power producer and of course the DISCOM, you already know the case of renewable purchase obligation where both the parties are not at times at the equal footing. Next being lack of supporting enthusiasm among various states. So northeastern states for instance are not that much enthusiastic in bringing up the solar power in India. The first and foremost reason being that the forest share in these states is very high. So if you want to install the large solar parks, you require barren land. And if you are clearing the forest in order to bring the solar energy, that is not at all sustainable. And the last one being price war with other renewable sources. It means the price which we are getting at wind power, the price which we are getting at nuclear power and other sources. So nuclear power is one-time investment, but it is a very long-term gaining product. Same is with the wind energy, because wind energy requires lesser area to sustain and to develop the power. So somewhere we are having the price war between solar energy and the other renewable sources. Now when it comes to the way forward, now let me give you some tips. I will not write down all the way forwards. I will just help you out to frame the way forward on yourself. Now let us assume that you have already listed all these issues in the examination and in fact more than this. And now you are stuck with what to write in the way forward. By the time you reach the mains examination, you would have studied enough about the government schemes and other initiatives. So apart from government scheme, what else you can write? Take the instance from these issues itself. I'll take 2-3 of them and show you how to write a way forward. Take the case of first one, the issue of domestic content requirement. Now, what way forward can we write? We can write that government can change the law. This is the first way forward in order to solve the issue. Second being, the government can negotiate at WTO. See, way forward is nothing but writing a solution to the issues, nothing else. Take another example. Let's say we are talking about solar waste. So what way forward can we write? We can say that we can have integrated solar park and recycle park. So if we are having solar park, so whatever equipments which are getting dysfunctional or which are damaged or which are depreciated can be brought to the recycle park in order to make the best use of solar waste. Now let us take another example, regionally concentrated. Now how can we solve this problem? It is very simple. Take solar energy to pan-India level. Provide subsidy to those areas which are not at all participatory in solar energy. And lastly, we can also go for government support to solar parks. So in this way, you can write n number of way forward. Now I'll take you to the major government initiative under solar energy. The first one, of course, being your National Solar Mission. Well, I will not discuss this scheme as such because that has already been done under the various DNS videos. So we'll go for the brief discussion. IREDA. Why it was started? For providing long-term loans. NISE was started to provide research and development in solar energy. We have solar parks and ultra major solar parks project. We have canal bank and canal tank solar infrastructure. We have sustainable rooftop implementation of solar transfiguration of India, also known as SRISTI scheme, where we promote rooftop solar power projects in India. We have Surya Mitra scheme to prepare qualified workforce, that is skill development and training or capacity building. We have renewable purchase obligation in order to smoothen the buying and selling of the solar power. We have National Green Energy Program and Green Energy Corridors. And lastly, we have Kusum scheme for decentralized power generation at micro level, especially focusing the agriculture needs. Apart from this, we also have International Solar Alliance, where India and France are the major and the founding partners, and the nations between both the tropics are the major beneficiary of this initiative. Now, after going through pros, cons, limitations, way forwards, government schemes and everything possible about the solar energy, let us see what has happened in the last 5 years of solar power generation in India. Now let us go through this animation and understand the regional distribution of solar power in the last 5 years. As you can see, this is in the 2016. We have Rajasthan being the top grosser of solar energy, the darkest possible color. And when it comes to the other one, we have Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. But when we talk about Jammu and Kashmir and the northeastern state, they are on the last platform. And the so is true with your Andaman and Nicobar. However, when we go through the installed capacity in gigawatts, it was under 10 gigawatt in 2016, which was not as promising as it was made under National Solar Mission 2010. So what happened after 2016? In 2017, we see that there was a change in the dynamics altogether. Now see, now Andhra Pradesh is as equivalent as Rajasthan or Tamil Nadu. And with that, even your Telangana, Karnataka and Madhya Pradesh are going for pace. In the total installed capacity, we were around 10 to 12 gigawatt. Now you can imagine there was 100% rise in the capacity installation. In the next year of 2018, Karnataka became the top player, and the other states like Rajasthan, Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, which were the top grossers, were not among the top 2 or top 3. And after Karnataka, we also see there is rise of solar power in the state of Telangana. The total capacity reached almost 20 gigawatts. In 2019, again there was Karnataka which topped the list, followed by the other South Indian states including your Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and others. Surprisingly, Kerala is one state which is not very well doing in terms of solar energy despite being in the tropical areas. The reason being the forest cover. In the same time in 2019, we see the Rajasthan and the Gujarat were doing fairly well on the average, but again the northeastern state and Jammu Kashmir were far behind the others. And now it's 2020. So in 2020 till March, that is the latest available data, we can see that Rajasthan is again going ahead with the other state, standing on the second position, and Karnataka of course is the top grosser of solar energy. And by now you can see that in 5 years we have come from 6 gigawatt on an average to 30 gigawatt. Now you can imagine just in 5 years the kind of quantum jump India has actually taken. It is almost 500% jump in what we were producing in 2016, and this is actually incredible initiative. In the same pace, if we go on ahead and ahead and ahead, what we will see that by the year 2030, we'll be able to produce over 125 gigawatt of power in the country. But the issue is that the rooftop power in this total 30 gigawatt is very low against the target of 40%. And this is the area where Government of India needs to go through subsidies, through lower prices, development of markets, cheaper imports, and the other initiatives. With this, now I'll take you to the important question for your mains practice. You can read this question and utilize all the information which I have provided in the article itself in order to write a good and suitable answer. With this, now we will move to the next article for the day. This article was published on page 4 of the Delhi edition, the Hindu newspaper. This article actually talks about a recent excavation which was undertaken in the state of Odisha in Balasore district. Now, where is Balasore district? It is on the northeastern side of your Odisha state, facing the Bay of Bengal and of course your state of West Bengal. The context of the article says that archaeologists find distinct traces of 3 cultural phases, same culture but 3 phases, at a site situated in the Balasore district of Odisha. Now, it means that it was not only the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization which was existing in India. It also means that humans were already living across the country. You know the case of Ramapithecus, of course the case of Bhimbetka, and of course the megalithic phase of Tamil Nadu and other southern states. It means that Indians or the people of India were already there. However, Indus Valley civilization is famous for its urban planning system. Alright, so the 3 cultural phases from which this place is related are your Chalcolithic period, which is 2000 to 1000 BC. I believe that you all know what is BC here, before Christ. Then comes the second phase was Iron Age up to 400 BC, and the last one was Early Historic Period or 200 BC. Well, this categorization means that whosoever was living in this area remained here for almost 2000 years, which is incredible and also shows that there was a kind of sustainability in their habitation. I've taken this article not just as a perspective of the history, because of course you should know all the relevance of the history and of course the places which were in news regarding the history, but it is also important for you to write a good answer in the mains examination wherever the question related to the architecture, civilization, culture and other is asked. Alright, so let us discuss these 3 phases. Chalcolithic phase. Indus Valley civilization is also part of Chalcolithic age. Thus, Indus Valley civilization actually developed and matured in the Chalcolithic age. However, by the starting or the initiation of the Iron Age, there was no Indus Valley civilization. Iron Age, on the other side, is mostly related to the pre-Mahajanpad era. However, by the end of the Iron Age, we saw a developed Mahajanpad era. And in this Iron Age, what we have observed is the development of the tools, especially related to your hunting and gathering and your agricultural purposes, was seen across the country. Historic phase here means especially that period when in northern India, Mahajanpad was very well developed. This is the period when we talk about your Mauryan dynasty. The Iron period is what we talk about the early phase of Mahajanpad or the initiation of Mahajanpad era, and during this Iron Age, the evidence proved that it was also the phase of Rig Vedic cultural and social development. Now, coming back to this place, the excavation of this place shows that people were mostly leading settled life. As I told you, they stayed here for almost 2000 years and had started agriculture, domestication, of animals, and of course the fishing. Fishing is obvious because they were living on the coastal areas. And apart from this, what else we have found? We have found the pottery in black and red ware. We have found the iron object, which proves that it also belongs to the Iron Age. We have found the other materials such as terracotta, bangles, beads, and some of the conical objects which would have been used for the hunting purposes. So, given all this discussion, now I'll take you to the important question attached to this article. Read the question carefully and answer in the comment box. And let us move to the next article for the day. This article is actually part of your editorial page and it was published on page 06 of the Delhi edition, the Hindu newspaper. This article actually talks about a net loss on the digital education which is provided in the Indian schools, especially the public schools. Recently, the Ministry of Education has released a report on the United Information System for Education Plus for your school education in India, and they have made an observation on this infrastructure with a special focus on the digital infrastructure, which includes availability of internet, availability of computers, and the teachers of computer as a subject. They have also talked about how many students were able to capture the education through digital means in the last 1 year period when the pandemic was across the nation and schools are universally shut down. Apart from that, we will also read about what this new report is all about. Well, UDISE Plus is developed by the Department of Education and Literacy, and the objective of this report is to capture all the necessary information related to schools, teachers, and student enrollment. So apart from students' favorite Acer report, now you have another report which you can quote, because Acer is part of a private initiative. It is a part of an NGO's initiative. So when it comes to the government initiative, when it comes to the government assessment, this report could be used for your general studies paper 2 in the mains examination. Now let us go through some of the observations of this scheme. The first one being, well, I believe you all can see these data sets and the values. If not, you can increase the resolution of your video. The first is the gross enrollment of the students. Now this report actually says that there has been a reduction in the gross enrollment ratio when we go from primary to the higher secondary. Now the gross enrollment ratio in these three categories, that is girls, boys and total, is almost similar. However, the girls take the precedence and it is same in all the other categories. However, the real issue is that there is fall in the GER. Now what is GER? GER is the ratio of children enrolled in a particular class, regardless of their age, to the eligible population in the age group of that class. So this GER shows that there is a reduction when a person moves from primary to the higher secondary across the gender, across the region. And this gross enrollment ratio is at pathetic situation when we talk about the states like Bihar, Jharkhand and any other. While when we talk about Kerala and other southern states, it is very, very good. The second observation is related to the gender parity index. This index shows whether the representation of females in the school education is in line with the representation of the girls in the corresponding population group. It means that if the sex ratio of India is, let's say, 940 over 1000, where this is female and this is male, is the same ratio available in your education system also or not? Well, the observation says that in the primary section, the GPI was initially high, it came down later and then it has increased by 2020. In upper primary, there is a continuous fall. In secondary, it is more or like same. However, surprisingly, in the higher education, there is rise of gender parity index, which means females are now becoming more and more part of your higher secondary education in the school education. And this is a very, very healthy sign when it comes to the education system in India. The another observation says about the pupil-teacher ratio. Because if pupil-teacher ratio is very weak, we cannot have digital infrastructure or digital education at all. Irrespective of what internet speed you have, irrespective of what gadget you are holding right now, if you do not have a good teacher-pupil ratio in this school, it is of no use at all. So if there is a reduction in PTR, it shows that one teacher has to teach less number of students. It means the ratio could be 1:25, one teacher, 25 students. And if it is rising, it means that 1:50. So one teacher has to teach 50 students. And it keeps on increasing and the situation keeps on deteriorating. So if we go by the data itself, it means that in the primary, we have seen a reduction in the pupil-teacher ratio, which is 26.5. It means 26 students, one teacher. When it comes to the upper primary, it is 18.5. It is also reducing by the years. The same is true in your secondary and same is true in your higher secondary. So overall, we can say there is a very good situation when it comes to pupil-teachers ratio in government schools from 2013 to 2020. And lastly, we have a percentage of the schools having special infrastructure facilities in India between 13 to 20. Now, this is a very important and healthy report. Observe this clearly. This will help you to write many points in your mains answer writing. Now, there are many categories which is given in the report itself. However, we will focus ourselves to the digital one. When it comes to the computer and the internet, there is rise in 2019 and 20 over what it was in 2013. It is almost 50 to 70% rise in the availability. However, still it is very low when it compared to the other equipments like, let's say, hand wash, electricity, medical checkup and other, which are as close as 90%. So here we require to improve upon the availability of teachers, availability of computers and internet in order to bridge the digital divide on education. So when it comes to improving the access to digital education, Government of India as well as at the state level have provided many initiatives. First of all, of course, being your National Digital Communication Policy. Apart from that, we have National Broadband Mission, we have Digital India Scheme, BharatNet, PM1E and others. What they will do, they will ensure your internet access. Apart from that, we also need universal broadband connectivity, public Wi-Fi hotspots, especially in the village areas. Apart from this, government has also come up with PM Disha scheme in order to provide the digital education to the people who are digitally illiterate, especially in the case of government schools at primary level. With this, now I'll take you to the important question which is attached to this article. Read the question carefully and answer in the comment box. And now we'll move to the next article for the day. Now this is a brief bullet, a new initiative. In this, we will take about all those articles or all those news clippings which are relevant but does not require in-depth or analytical study. So here we will take just the headlines and important pointers which were given in the newspaper. This will help you to reduce your effort in going through all the news or all the important news articles in the newspaper. After this, I believe you will not require to go through all those minute articles or small articles which are relevant to remember, however not as relevant to prepare in-depth notes. So the first one is your goods export touch record of 91 billion in Q1. And the reason for this record high is your sectors such as engineering, gems and jewelry and your petroleum products. However, India was a net importer in the June 2021 with a trade deficit of 9.1 billion. You already must have read about that recently India registered a current account surplus, not because of the high exports but because of the low imports. And now India, because of this, is eyeing a target of 400 billion of merchandise exports in the current fiscal. Given this pace, this target does not seem to be very far away. The next article is about the Rajasthan, which has taken a big step in vocational education in school. Now what has happened? Government of Rajasthan has introduced vocational classes. It is a compulsory classes from 6th standard in all the schools as a part of new education policy 2020. And how this will help? This will help in inculcating at least one skill in each student, especially those of the rural background who cannot find a high education levels or higher educational institutions. So with this, they can find a better employment opportunity in the nearby areas. And lastly, District collectors in the odd district would be responsible to implement this policy under the new education policy. The next news is regarding a forex reserve or the foreign exchange reserve, which saw a surge of $5 billion to $609 billion. So if you're writing mails this year, these kind of data will help you to boost your marking in the examination. The reason for the rise, of course, being your rise in the foreign currency assets. Apart from this, the other category was the gold, which also saw a rise of $365 million. However, the special drawing rights, also known as SDR with the IMF, remain unchanged. And the last one being that the retailers or the wholesaler will now get an MSME tag. MSME means micro, small and medium enterprises tag, and the definition of this was recently changed also. Now what has actually happened? The MSME of the retail and the wholesaler will now be under the MSME, and because of this, they will get the benefit of priority sector lending under the RBI guidelines. Now, a retailer who is selling a good or a wholesaler who is selling a good can get priority sector lendings under RBI guidelines. With this, now let us move to the next article for the day. So, the last article for the day is your scheme of the day. So here we will be discussing about the Electronic National Agriculture Market or ENAM. Now what it is and how does it function, let us see. Well, it is a central sector scheme, hence the funding would come from the central. The Small Farmer Agriculture Consortium would be your implementing agency under the supervision of Ministry of Agriculture. Now what this SAFC will do, they will get funds from your agriculture tech infrastructure fund, and these funds will be utilized to create a pan-India electronic trading platform. So it is like a website. So on that website you can go, you can sell or you can buy agriculture products in a wholesale manner. On this platform, what government will do, they will create a networks of existing APMC mandis. So if you go through this portal, it is already available. So if you go through this portal, you will find the different prices which are prevailing across different states, different mandis and whatnot. And of course, you can do a trading also. The best benefit of this scheme is that it will create a unified national market for agriculture products. So if you are working in Maharashtra, if you are working in the mandi of Maharashtra, and let's say you have 1000 tons of wheat. So through this portal, you can sell that wheat in a trader in Uttar Pradesh through price discovery. Now, connected to a mandi at a back end and promotes genuine price discovery. So these are the two benefits of this scheme. So as I said, if you are working in Maharashtra, you can sell the product in Uttar Pradesh through price discovery. Apart from this, this scheme also provides for liberal licensing. So now we have one nation, one license for all mandis. So you get the license and now you have ability or power to sell to each and every vendor across the nation who are trading on this platform. This license is provided to traders and the commission agents who are actually functioning under the state authorities. Apart from the licensing, there is also a market fees. But against what was existing in the previous method or a system, now we have single point levy. So you have to pay a market fee once and not at every level of marketing. So what happens is that this fees is levied on the first wholesale purchase from the farmer. If you want to purchase from the farmer, pay the market fees only for the first wholesale purchase. And apart from that, a person or a participating agent will also get a soil testing laboratories which are already available in the mandis. This will definitely help in providing a better agricultural practices across the nation. And lastly, when it comes to the implementation, all the willing states, see, it is not a forced upon scheme. Okay, so it is not a forced upon scheme because agriculture comes under the state list of 7th schedule. So states are promoted and not forced to go for this scheme. So willing states can enact a suitable provisions in their APMC Act. So states have that APMC Act for the integration of the e-platform. So a state legislature will enact or will amend the act and then participate in ENAM. With this, now we move to the question attached to this article. Read the question carefully and answer in the comment box. That's all guys for today. Now we'll move to the last part of our today's discussion, which is question of the day. Now read the question carefully and answer in the comment box.